Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well out there. Now, if I had more technological skills, right now I would cut to an animation of confetti falling, but I don't have those skills, so instead I'm gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way. Yay! All right, that was a little less dramatic than I was expecting. Nonetheless, why am I excited? I'm excited because you guys get the chance to take a test tomorrow and show me what you've learned this unit. Okay, hopefully you guys are pumped up as well. So this test is going to be over the slavery unit, and today is going to be our review. I need to pull up the review sheet so that we can take a look at it. Sorry, it just took a second there. Okay, you should be able to see it now. Now this test is going to be a little different than the last test, okay? It's going to have 4 questions as opposed to 20 on the last one. But the thing is, these 4 questions are extended response questions. So that means you're going to see, it's going to ask you to do something, and you're going to have to write out at least a paragraph giving a good, thoughtful explanation of it. So I only want, I'm only having you do 4 because I want you to take your time, reread any information that you need to go over again, and craft a thoughtful response, okay? Stuff that's the same, you can use Discovery Ed and should use it, right? I'm not expecting you to memorize this information. You can also use the transatlantic slave trade presentation. Okay, that was the video I made that helped you guys work on that worksheet. You can go back and watch that video again. Okay, again, would also be helpful. You cannot use other websites or sources, okay? And it's very obvious when you do that, okay? Don't do that. These are your options you can use. The ones I've kind of highlighted there. You also can't use help from anybody else, whether it's a teacher in your classroom or a classmate or a parent. This is an assessment where I want to see what can you do, what individual skills have you built, okay? Because that's the purpose of education, is that you're gaining these skills and can do these on your own. Okay, what is going to be on the test? Okay, these are the sort of 4 topics. So I'm giving you a preview. So if you want to review ahead of time, it's not a bad idea. One of them is going to be about the transatlantic slave trade. One of them is going to be using an image, finding a main idea, giving evidence, and using your reasoning or offering reasoning. Another one is going to be exploring the important similarities and differences between the lives of enslaved people and free African Americans, and I'm going to comment on that in a second. And the last one is looking again at African American spirituals and trying to find either hope or sorrow in them and being able to make an argument, right? Use evidence to support which one you pick and explain your reasoning. So it's stuff you've worked on, right? It's just another chance for you to really show me you've learned it by this point. And I want to touch on this one just real quick. I think probably some of us are going to want to review this because not a lot of students did very well in this assignment. And I don't think it was because students didn't understand how to do it. I think a lot of you guys didn't do the reading or just didn't really read very closely, because I got a lot of really general answers that didn't show any specific knowledge about slavery other than the most basic things anybody would know. But that's not what I'm looking to see. I'm looking to see that you've studied this and that you've actually learned something more specific, more unique. That's why I wanted you to use tabs 3 through 5 to learn and dig into that information. So if you didn't do well on that the first time, when you do it on the test, you need to really actually read tabs 3 through 5 to get that extra info. Just for an example, if you were to read these things through, some of the similarities you would have seen from enslaved people and free people would be things like they're both very religious, right? You would have seen in there that they both helped with the Underground Railroad. They both faced discrimination. These are specific things that show me you've studied it deeper and you've understood it. So just keep that in mind when you do the test. Actually, when you're preparing for the test, because you should be doing that during your studying. So for your assignment today, you are going to be doing some sample questions. I'm going to touch on that in a second, but I do actually want you guys to pause right here. I want you to pull the review sheet up on your Chromebook, and I want you, of these 4 different topics, I want you to highlight the 2 you need to work on the most, okay? Go ahead and pause and do that now. Okay, I'm going to assume that you have done that. That is going to help you to make sure that you study those extra when you are studying later today. Okay, so for these sample questions, I've only done 2, even though technically you have 4 test questions when you take the test. But I didn't, I didn't want to load you up with too much the day before the test. So what I kind of thought is that 2 of the questions have to do with making an argument, right? One is with a song, one is with a picture. So I figured I'd just have you practice one of those types. You're going to do a different picture, and you're going to make an argument based around that picture. And that should give you, again, a sense for how well you could do on both of the questions that have an argument. And then 2 other questions have to do just sort of with explaining how things work, right? And so those are going to require similar skills. So I just decided to pick one sample question that will get you practicing using the textbook and explaining how things work. And again, that should get you set up for those types of skills. However, I do want to model one response. So again, you can see me in process of how it should look to do a good job on this. I'm only going to model the explanation question because I do feel like we've spent more time doing the arguments, right? Main idea, details, reasoning, all that kind of stuff. So I think this is the one I want to spend extra time just showing you, okay? So I'm going to look at the question, and it says, explain how a plantation worked, including the people involved and what they did. And it tells me right off the bat where I'm going to find the information that I'm looking for. So that's good. So I know that I need to go to 9.1 tab 1. So I'm in 9.1 already, as you can see. I'm going to go to tab 1. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at that question again real quick. So if I'm going to explain how plantations worked, I want to think about, and this is the same for any question you do for my tests, I want to try to explain this as if I was teaching somebody who doesn't know much about the topic, okay? So I'm still going to stick to just the important info. I'm not putting everything, but what I feel is important, I need to explain clearly and thoroughly enough that they could understand that, okay? So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to use my headings to help me out. So this first part doesn't have its own subheading, but I know from reading this textbook that it's usually like an introduction. The second one says slavery on plantations, and the third one says slave codes. Well, I know it's not going to be about slave codes, but if I go back up and I'm like, oh yeah, slavery on plantations, this is what I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to explain how plantations worked. So I'm going to try to take this info, and I'm going to try to boil it down to the most important information to teach my reader about it, okay? Now, some people might not know what a plantation is, so that's probably a good starting point. Right here in the first sentence, it says that they're large farms. And if I remember from when I've done vocab with you guys, they typically produced a valuable crop. So I'm probably going to add that in to have just a good response there. So why don't I just start by saying, let's go with, first of all, plantations are large farms that, I'll use a different word, it's a little bit of a fancy one, that yield a valuable, crop. Okay, so I gave a little bit of a sense for what specifically I want you to look for. So the people involved and what they did. So I'm really mostly just going to stick to that. Once I've explained what the plantation is, I need to give you a sense of who worked on a plantation, who was involved with it, and what each person did. So I've already read this, so I'm not going to read it all again out loud, but I'll talk you through what I was thinking about when I did it. First of all, this whole paragraph right here is about enslaved people and what they did. So that's obviously a group I want to talk about. And if I look through it, it talks about how they did all the hard labor, okay? So I'm going to use my own words. So I'm going to leave the text. I'm going to read it, make sure I understand it, and then I'm going to leave that tab so then I have to explain it in my own words, right? That's what forces you to explain things in your own words. So I'm going to say enslaved people did all the physical work, which is my own wording, on the plantation. Okay. I probably don't want to move on that quite yet because I might just want to give one example or a couple examples of what that type of work is. So it says right here, they cleared the land, they planted, they weeded. Okay, so why don't I just put that, but put it in my own words. Some examples of this work are, instead of clearing the land, I will say preparing the soil, planting the seeds, and it said weeding. Well, I'll say removing any weeds. Cool. I don't really need to put all these extra details because I'm just trying to give a summary so I can look through it, but I can tell you I've already looked through it and I think it's a little too specific. So I might be moving on to the next person, except I did notice there's one more paragraph that's about what enslaved people did. And I'm just going to take, I think the main point here, and I think this is important, is that it says that it wasn't easy. It really took a lot of effort and skill to do this. So that's pretty important. I think that's why they made it a new paragraph, because it's kind of a new important idea. So I'll just go ahead and put this work was often difficult and required a lot of skill. Okay, I've got plenty about enslaved people. Let's see who else was involved on these plantations. The next paragraph is about an overseer. And again, I've already read this, but I saw in there that like they're hired to basically try to get the most out of the enslaved workers, usually with sort of like harsh treatment, whippings and stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and describe that too. Another person, let's say group, because there's more than one usually. Another group on the plantation was the overseers who were hired to get the most work out of the enslaved, workers, okay? And I'll just add that extra detail I was telling you. It seemed kind of important. I'll say they often use, and I won't use harsh because I want to change the wording to my own words. So I'll say they often use brutal methods like whipping to get enslaved people to work harder. Okay, I've heard them talk about the plantation owner or landowner a number of times, so they're probably important too. I will tell you, I read on and it doesn't really specify the rest of the way what the plantation owners do. So I then had to go up and maybe check another section, right? So I went through this section and it gave me a little more information. It talked about how the plantation owner got all the profits. And then the rest of the way, guys, I had to make an inference. I had to think about what I've read and when I've heard the word plantation owner, and think about what it was saying they did, right? Because I did remember reading that they could fire the overseer. They were in charge of hiring them. So like from my reading, I got the sense that they basically had to manage the plantation, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and put that too. So I'm going to say, lastly, the plantation owner managed the whole plantation. And then I'm going to put, they got the profits from the crops sold. Okay. Now that's a nice response, right? Remember that I went through, I really just picked out the most important events. I explained them specifically and clearly so that somebody who didn't know much about this topic would understand it. And I put it in my own words, right? That's the formula for a good explanation response to one of these questions. Hopefully that helps you. You're gonna, like I said, practice something very similar when you do number one. It's a different topic because I want you to practice it on your own, but you're gonna do something very similar for your number one on the sample questions. And then again, remember for number two, you're gonna work on making an argument, in this case, using an image, okay? Once you're finished, you will submit that and I will give you some feedback for anything else you might want to review. And then I would say after that, spend a little bit more time studying the specific topics that are going to come up on the test themselves. In particular, I would spend some extra time on the two topics that you highlighted that you need to work on. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. So go ahead and get working now. Send me a message if you get confused with anything. All right, good luck, guys. Have a good day.